Next, from Springfield, we sit down with State Representative Jeanne Ives as she discusses her experiences and lessons she learned on the campaign trail of her GOP gubernatorial campaign, which fell just 20,000 votes short of unseating Governor Rauner as the Republican candidate. We also get her thoughts on the future of Illinois and what the future holds for her as she retires from public office. This runs about 45 minutes.
Jeanne Ives, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel.
Thank you for having me again.
It was about, I guess, 6 months ago, maybe, somewhere like that. We were talking, and you were just days away still from announcing your run for governor, still kind of thinking about it. Now here we are. You ran, barely missed becoming the nominee, and no one gave you any chance, I think, of succeeding when you started.
I did, but I know most people were betting against us.
Well, of course, I mean, you were a state rep from the Wheaton area, but many people around the state had no reason to have ever heard of you, as they don't, many representatives.
Right.
So you were starting from scratch, where the governor not only had a lot more money, but he had name recognition that you didn't have. And you came within how many votes of getting the nomination?
Just shy of 20,000 votes, so you flip 10 and you win.
Wow. It was incredible, and as I say, I think I've heard from many people who thought you just ran an excellent campaign and complimented you. I think, of course, it wasn't a debate, but when you and the governor appeared side by side at the Tribune, I think that put you on the map because so many people wrote about how impressed they were with your performance and knowledge of policy that apparently the governor, in their estimation, wasn't able to match.
He had a difficult time answering important questions. I definitely agree with that assessment.
So people were, well, why are you interviewing her now? She's not the nominee. And we thought, well, it's not often that people get to go around the state in a compressed period of time talking to groups across the state. Now, of course, you were talking to Republican groups, so you weren't going out of your way. But we thought it would be interesting, kind of a debriefing of what did you learn over this experience of going around and talking to so many corners of the state and little groups? What did you learn as an individual that maybe you didn't know before? And what did you learn from the people that you were talking to and listening to that maybe you weren't appreciative of before this experience?
Well, thanks for the opportunity, first of all, to come on your show and essentially give you some feedback about Illinois and what I've learned in really it was a 4.5-month campaign for us. We really didn't get started until October 28th when we had identified our lieutenant governor, a guy named Rich Morthland. He lives out in Rock Island County. And we picked him because he represented that part of Illinois that's essentially been forgotten by the political ruling class that, lives really in the Chicagoland area. And, that was intentional. It was intentional because Illinois is not just Chicago, but you would think it were only Chicago if you sat in the state legislature like I have for the last 6 years and seen just how they control all the conversation. And so we put on 22,000 miles on my car in about 4.5 months, and we went everywhere. I mean, I know I personally hosted events or had events in at least 50 counties in the state of Illinois, and then you can add probably another 15 that Rich did himself, events with real people. So we got a broad perspective on the state.
I was curious when you said 50 counties, and of course there's 102.
Yes.
Did you even campaign in Chicago?
Oh, yes,
in
we
Cook
did.
County?
Yes, we did. And that's what I was going to actually get to a little bit. So, there's a lot that I think that the state is much more moderate than people think. It's not truly a liberal state. There's a lot that binds all of us together. And I remember specifically, I was in it was in the center of Chicago, and I'm forgetting exactly where it was. It was an expensive area of Chicago where they were hosting a community meeting. And they asked me to just come in and talk about the issues and take questions. And for an hour and a half, I gave it a half-hour opening about the state of the state, financially, because I do focus on finances primarily, and then open up to questions. And from that meeting to the meetings I had in Vienna, and in Redbud, and in Mattoon, and Rock Island, and Madison County, the meetings were very similar. It was about jobs and opportunity. It was about property taxes. and it was really about public corruption. And it didn't matter what type of Illinoisan you were struggling with those three concepts to begin with. So I think there's a lot more that binds Illinoisans together than what separates us.
Are the people, what's the tenor of the people? Are they hopeful? Are they cynical? I mean, we hear so many people are just saying, forget about Illinois, and they're packing their bags and moving out.
People don't want to leave Illinois. That's what's interesting. They really don't. Most people have built a life here. If they're living in Chicago, they love the city. They love all the amenities it has, all the excitement that surrounds that city. Its availability to major networks for transportation, whether it's O'Hare or Midway or the internet or the interstate system. So they love the city if they're in Chicago. If you're in the suburbs, you know, you love what the suburbs bring. You can easily get into the city for typically if you're working there, or you've got really good communities that have great parks, they're safe, they're just vibrant in and of themselves. If you're in the farmland, I mean, that's the bread and butter of our state is the farmland, right? But that's a whole different culture. It's where you can hunt and you can easily fish and you know your neighbors at a different level. And it's home. It's home because farmers don't leave. They're tied to the land, and neither do the people that support them. So that's what's fascinating. People want to stay, and I guess that's what I learned. They don't want to leave, but they feel like they are being pushed out. More than anything, people feel they're being pushed out. Their children can't find the job opportunities that allow them to thrive in this state, or financially, they just can't make sense of staying here.
And you've probably heard many times, I presume you've mentioned property taxes, that many people are just being taxed out of their homes.
And they are. And they truly are. It just doesn't make sense because, you know, we're you can't hide the facts that, you know, Tennessee, a $250,000 house in Tennessee costs, the property taxes are about $1,500, and a $250,000 house in the state of Illinois on average is going to cost you, you know, $8,000 in property taxes. I mean, you just can't hide these facts from people any longer. And so, you know, that's where we are. People know that they can get better value elsewhere, and unfortunately, it's the opportunities too for their kids, both on the higher education level and then just jobs.
You were running a campaign on the cheap, comparatively. Mm-hmm. It didn't used to be on the cheap. You raised what, about $5 million?
We spent just over $4 million, or right around the $4 million mark.
But again, to remind viewers, you started, I think, around your kitchen table with nothing, just made the decision to run. Mm-hmm. Just to back up again, I think it's interesting to hear. Why, when no one gave you a chance of winning, at least all the smart people, and you didn't win, but you certainly came, as we said, much closer. Someone said to me recently, if the campaign had gone another week, you would have won.
And we believe that's true too, but
why did you take this on when the odds were such against you?
Well, first of all, I just had faith that that Republican primary voters, if presented with the truth, would make a different choice than Governor Rauner. I just felt that. And so it was incumbent upon me to inform them, which is all I've been trying to do as a state rep, is essentially win the education war so that people understand exactly the state of Illinois. And I just felt like I had to do that. And I did, and I felt like I was the perfect vehicle for it because I didn't get involved here to sit in my safe seat in Wheaton, you know, collect a taxpayer-funded pension and health care and retire after 20 years and not really get anything done. So if I wasn't going to get anything done, I was actually going to just go for it. And so I gave up my safe seat. I'm not running again. Obviously, I never took a taxpayer-funded pension to begin with. So I wasn't interested in that. I was interested in really affecting change, and there was no better way than to take out Governor Rauner. So that's why I got involved. And you look, Rauner deserved a challenge for how he, you know, signed on to certain issues that were just against our party platform.
Yeah, the abortion funding.
There was a number of them. For me, I mean, that was obviously the tipping point for most Republicans. They wanted somebody to challenge him, but there was a number of issues that we just differed on, and I knew that the true policy agenda that needs to get through in the state of Illinois was he was not going to answer the call. He was not going to use the power of the governorship, because he hadn't for 3 years, to answer the call on our most critical issues. So that's why the challenge.
We in the press would often cite the two bills, the abortion funding bill and the so-called sanctuary city bill. But when you were talking to the Republicans around the state, were those the issue? How much did those issues resonate, or were, and you somewhat touched on this already, were they interested in just all these others like property taxes and issues? And to what extent did they feel not necessarily betrayed by the governor as far as those issues? And maybe they did. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I'm just wondering, to what extent did the people that didn't hang around the state capitol in Springfield, because we think one thing and maybe the reality is different out there, or were they more focused on, they felt maybe just betrayed by the fact that so little has been done during his administration?
Well, let's go back to this. Governor Rauner won. So, the majority of Republicans, although a very slim majority in the race, decided that he was the better alternative regardless of these issues. So he won. We recognize that. But really, all the Republicans I talked to, even the ones that did vote for Governor Rauner or were supporting him, understood that he made bad choices in signing the taxpayer funding of abortion bill, in making us a sanctuary state, which he wants to deny, but the evidence is fully there that we are a sanctuary state, and then obviously not really getting anything done. So, but obviously the majority of Illinois Republicans, I'd like to emphasize again, they did still choose the governor, so they must have looked over those, while they were detriments to them, it wasn't a strong enough case to come over to the Ives team.
If you had to change anything, would you have changed anything about the kid? Do you look back and go, man, if only we had done this versus that? I mean, do you think, how much as a candidate, I'm curious about the human element of running too.
Yeah, sure.
How much do you, when you lose a race like this, do you look at it like, wow, we came even closer than I imagined, or do you say, we came so close, if only I had done something else, we would have won?
Well, here's the deal. I mean, it's always a money challenge, right? So you have to raise the money in order to get your message out. So, and I was told you need to raise money, but there was so much time consuming the campaign, just being out trying to meet people, that I did not put the focus on that as much as I should have. We were a great team. We were not a professional team. We did not even have a professional campaign manager. We did not have any
Did you have a manager?
No, we did not. We did not have a general consultant. We were a group
Did you ever do a
of
poll?
people. Well, yeah, we did some polls. Absolutely, we did some polls. But we are a group of dedicated people, dedicated to this cause, and I picked and chose some particular people that I knew had the skill set to implement certain things in the field, or for scheduling, or for communication. So I picked people that I had worked with in the past, and I'd seen their skill sets, and we just started to divide up duties and make a go at this. So it's pretty incredible as far. Even my finance chair really didn't want to be a finance chair. He just wanted to kick it off and get it started. So we didn't have a per se fundraiser, or professional fundraiser. We had somebody who helped with that. We had maybe 8, 9, at most 10 paid staff, and half of that was probably part-time. So we had over 1,000 volunteers, though, sign up to help us in the field.
How did you contact those, or what was the mechanism for them to join your campaign?
We had coalitions of support from conservative Republican groups that we knew about, to pro-life groups that we knew about, to people who just figured out our campaign. And so we had a whole system for tracking our volunteers. We had county coordinators in nearly every single county, which is amazing. Think about this. We did this all in 4.5 months.
Yeah.
All of it. It's fantastic. But obviously, if I had to do anything different, it'd be try and raise more money early on, so that we could have had another $1 million, another 10 days, we would have won. And I think that's the case. But so be it.
When you run, and I don't know if other people are interested in this, I just sometimes, I often say, you know, thank goodness we have people that run at all. So many people go, I'm not going to put myself through that. Not just for governor, but state rep or anything.
Yes.
And as I say, you know, we don't have democracy without elections. We don't have elections without candidates. So thank goodness we have some people that are going to run. And there's a lot of places, a lot of races that we have where there are no candidates, so
right.
people are not opposed. So it's not to say we even have opposition all the time. But going from nothing, this is like a sprint.
That's right.
What is it like physically for a candidate to just go out there as you had to and to try to really spread the word, because you didn't have the money, through personal appearances all across the state? I mean, just how grueling is that physically?
Oh, we did it. I mean, we were on the road nearly every single day. We were on the road, and when the initial money didn't come in, we thought we weren't going to be able to run this campaign. So I called one person, and he said, well, let's go find our own money. Then I called my husband. I said, I'm not sure we can do this campaign. We don't have like a big chunk of money that we're going to get. And he said, you have to do this campaign. And when my husband said you have to do this campaign, that's when I knew he was all in. And having him all in really meant that I was free to go at any time, whenever I had to, and he was just going to handle things from home. And so I needed that freedom to really just be the candidate. Like if I had to leave at 5 in the morning, I wasn't going to be back till midnight, I knew that he was going to handle our 2 children that are still at home. We have 5 children, 2 are still at home. And so that freed me up, but literally we were on the road all the time, constantly. And we stayed overnight a few nights. We had access to an airplane, I think maybe 3 times. But other than that, we drove around the state and stopped. And we always tried to do things in threes. So if we stopped somewhere, there was a media event, an open event to the community, and a Republican event. And so we kept trying to schedule tightly so our time was most efficiently used. And that really helped. And fortunately, the media was very interested in this campaign. And so that really helped get us our word out, because the media's interest propelled us forward.
At what point were they interested? Were they interested all along? Or
all along, really. Yeah, all along they were very much interested. I think, obviously, after the Tribune debate and then the controversial ad, the media attention then really amped up because they knew that we had a credible campaign, because after that we also got a significant donation to get our message out. So then, you know, they're very receptive to hearing from us, and I would say that they treated us fairly. Fairly from the standpoint that when Bruce Rauner was obviously lying about me being Madigan's favorite Republican, it was the media who first called him out for his deceptive ad. Thank you, Greg Hines, for calling him out for that. Thank you, John Cass, for writing 4 articles about it. Thank you to you for writing about it. Just basically being the umpire, calling balls and strikes, and knowing that ad was not true. And so I appreciate the media, you know, Eric Zorn of the Trib too. Not necessarily these guys are all aligned with me,
right,
politically speaking, but they did call the balls and strikes when it came to his ads.
Yeah, Eric Zorn with the Chicago columnist, who's not a conservative. I mean, so
no, not at all.
He was, but he was just saying how the governor was misrepresenting his characterization of who you were and what you were about. To say, as I did, to be blunt. But I mean, I think that's.
But the media would show up for our press conferences faithfully and report on what we were doing, and so I do appreciate that.
And that, which is also somewhat of an interesting, you know, when I do an interview, I sometimes think of it not just being aired next week, but aired or watched 50 years from now, when people look back. We've had video of Governor Thompson talking about the 1982 campaign as an example.
Sure.
Certain campaigns, that one stands out because it was so close, and I think yours will. And it's almost never happened that someone takes on a sitting governor of their own party and then comes so close. So I think yours was and will be remembered historically. To that extent, when who knows what the media will be 50 years from now.
Right.
So much in this day and age.
But let's be clear here. So the media was very good. There were quite a few editorial boards that I was disappointed in. And I think that they missed the boat when I really wanted to talk about policy. they wanted to harp on one little issue, like
They want to talk
social
about your
issues.
commercial or
Oh yeah, or social issues. And they left out this entire policy formation that I've been working on for 6 years. And that really is what would propel the state forward.
I think it's a fair argument to say people aren't leaving Illinois because of gay marriage or transgender issues.
No, and we're all
or any
past
of
that
those,
anyway. I mean, we've passed all those bills, right?
Right. So, but they are leaving it for economic reasons, and we're struggling
Yes, they
because
are.
of economic reasons. People are losing their homes for economic reasons.
That's right.
But I was going to say, how much did, historically, people have to raise so much money to put an ad on the TV stations
Oh, they're
and the
super
radio.
expensive. I had no idea.
I think some Chicago stations charge at certain times, it varies what time of day, but $6,000 or so for a 30-second commercial for one.
Well, I will say this, one fun thing we did is we did do a Chicago area Super Bowl ad, which was fabulous. I mean, my kids were just thrilled about it. Like, hey, and they were getting texts.
And it didn't cost $2 million.
No, it didn't. But because it was a localized ad, obviously it was one of their local ad spots. But it was still just under $100,000 for that one Super Bowl ad, and
Wow.
you know, but it was also.
How do you make
important.
that decision that that's the way to spend that money?
Well, we knew we had to raise my name ID
profile.
very quickly in my profile, and so that was, you know, worth doing at that point.
I want to talk about some more issues too, but I think this is, as I said to you before we started, I wanted to talk to you while the impressions were fresh. You know, I mean, all
Yes.
of us kind of lose track of things that we knew right after an event. So when you did, one of the issues that we said, the controversial ad where you had different actors representing different diverse
Policy
groups.
choices. Mm-hmm.
And I've heard your response as far as defending the ad, but why don't we do that again? What was the purpose, and do you regret that ad, or do you not regret that?
No, that ad was necessary. One, remember, we're in the Republican primary election cycle, right? And so Republican voters needed to understand the constituencies and the policy choices that Governor Rauner made, which is why we did that ad. It was a depiction of who he sided with in this Republican primary. And so that's what it was. But each one of those actors represented policy choices that he made. So, you know, you know, and obviously it was clever. The ad was clever. Some call it controversial or antagonistic. No, I mean, not at all. It's, if this were a Saturday Night Live skit, people would be laughing about, if this were a Saturday Night Live skit about the worst Republican governor in America, as determined by National Review, people would have been laughing, because it was, it wasn't like, it wasn't sinister. There was no dark music. It wasn't anything like that. So anyway.
The big controversy or one of the controversies, I guess, but was on the governor's campaign theme that you were Mike Madigan's favorite representative, which I and others said was ridiculous. He might have said any number of things. He could have said you weren't experienced enough, or anything that would have been up for argument, you know, subjective decision. But there's no way that you were Mike Madigan's favorite representative. I mean, that's just totally off track and untrue. And he knew it was untrue.
This is a theme that the Republicans have tried to use over the last two election cycles. So you actually saw this used to some degree in the McCarter-Shimkus race.
In fact, as we stand here, I talked to Senator Kyle McCarter, who apparently is going to be our new ambassador to Kenya.
That's
but he was saying that it was exactly the same ad they ran against him.
Right, and so they knew that it worked, and I believe it was suggested by them, by that campaign, to use it again against me. And so, you know, I did very well actually up in the suburbs because people know me. But in central and southern Illinois, when you saturate the market with something like that, and Mike Madigan is to blame for a lot of the economic issues here, and they don't want anybody who's close to Madigan to be somebody that represents them. So they knew that the ad was effective because they had already tried it in a different primary. It worked in that area. So They did. That's what they did. That was their tactic. But you know, unfortunately, House Republican organization used this in primaries up in the northern part of the state as well against opponents. You know, connecting a kid who is still at the University of Illinois but running for state rep, basically said that he is also a friend of Mike Madigan's. The guy's never met Mike Madigan. So, I mean, I just think, you know, stretching the truth to that extent is just not appropriate.
Which this takes us to another part that I wanted to talk about. I mean, kind of, on one hand, when you, okay, so you run, there's an election, and you go from going 90 miles an hour to like nothing, I guess, you know. On one hand, you're probably happy with that because you can catch up on your sleep for a little bit. Do you miss the energy of the campaign at this point? And I think a lot of people who would be watching this were so, because you came so close, there was obviously a lot of support that you had built up around the state and a lot of disappointed people who wish that you had been the nominee, that you would still be out there making speeches. To what extent are they going to hear from you again?
They already are hearing from me again, which is great. I've already done the Shelby County Lincoln Day dinner. I am scheduled to do speak at the Lincoln Day dinner in Will County, which I won Will County. I'm already scheduled in June for a Lake County event. I'm going to another event in Decatur at the end of this month. I'm doing a Springfield event at the end of this month, a speaking engagement. So people still want to hear from me because they want to hear the issues. They want to know what's going on. And I really felt like I was giving them hope because I was informing them of what's happening here in Springfield. And they had not heard a lot of the information I had given them. And so that's why I went on this mission anyway, because until people are understanding what's going on in Illinois economically, we're never going to get the change that we need.
And so that's interesting because so what people were hungry for, it sounded like, was not someone to come out with just campaign rhetoric, but someone who they felt that when someone was giving them the straight scoop, it resonated with them.
That's right.
Did you?
Exactly right.
I'm curious, do you get Democrats going, you know, I'm not going to vote for you, but I appreciate what you're telling me? I mean, did you also?
Well, I also had Democrats vote for me. And I also had pro-life Democrats host a fundraiser for me in Oak Lawn. Wow. So, you know, a suburb of Chicago.
Well, that says a lot because...
Yeah, so absolutely. But they also wanted to hear about the fiscal issues, too. And we had some tough conversations with cops and firefighters. And I had, you know, hey, your pensions are headed to insolvency. So what are we going to do?
Do they know that their pensions... They didn't want to hear that.
So I did actually, I mean, I had a number of events in Chicago talking to people that are public sector workers.
And I was going to say, I mean, a lot of people don't know the extent to which the pensions are in such serious trouble of financial collapse within a few years of just running out of money. And either we're going to let them run out of money, which is probably not going to happen, or there's going to have to be some way of raising a lot of money, which would indicate more taxes.
That's not the answer.
Well, I'm not arguing for that, but I'm saying something's going to have to be done one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I don't know to what extent, I often make the case that campaigns are for the people. It's our chance to hire people for a job.
That's right.
It's not for the candidates.
Right.
And to what extent are we going to hear any honest discussion of that issue among others?
Well, I will be honest with you. One thing that did frustrate me on the campaign is that while I said that the media covered our campaign, my problem with them is that sometimes you would get these editorials saying, yeah, but nobody's talked about pensions. We did an entire press conference on pensions. An entire press conference. And we talked about the economic issues all the time. And I don't feel like those were covered sufficiently.
Do you think that the media is educated enough to cover that? I know you, but I would make the observation that most people are financially illiterate in our society. They shouldn't be. It's not that they're stupid. We're not taught this in schools. And I'm critical of many journalism schools that they have people graduating. I've gone through two and never had anything about economics. I mean, I learned it outside of school.
No, I do feel like a lot of the journalists who were asking me questions, so now some of these editorial folks are very informed because they've been following it for years. But some of the new folks, they just don't even, it goes right over their head. They don't understand the depth of the problem, and they can't get their head around it. But besides, this stuff is not easy to message in an 8-second soundbite, and I'm not an 8-second soundbite person, so I was constantly being told, okay, get your point across quickly. Well, I'm sorry, I can't discuss pension insolvency in a quick one sentence.
Honestly, because I wrote my master's thesis on this years ago, that's why I wanted to have the Illinois channel, because you can't discuss so many issues in a soundbite. They don't fit into a soundbite. And someone ought to talk about these issues.
Well, we have to in the state of Illinois.
You would think so. So what happens now? I mean, you can go out and talk, but you're not going to be even in the legislature come November. So what's the future for Jeanne Ives?
Well, I'm actually here through January, so if they do any sort of lame duck session in January, I'm here, until the next group is seated. I don't know what's in my future. We're figuring that out. Obviously, people have suggested I run for a different office. People still want, obviously, me to speak. I just don't know yet. I see myself doing something in the policy arena and working with experts to come up with the solutions that are facing not just Illinois, but Connecticut, New Jersey, California, Kentucky even, who are just under,
There's many states that are also facing. Illinois is not alone as far as
No, we're not alone, but we are the outlier. We are the outlier, and if we can come up with if we can kind of come up with a solution that's reasonable for Illinois, then we can make sure that the other states are aware of that.
Let's spend a little time on that. So when you talk to people and they say, well, first of all, you brought these letters. Did you want to discuss these letters?
I just thought this was interesting. So I showed up in my office in Springfield, and of course I have personal letters that came in on the campaign, and it's people don't know that this is my official address and not to send me campaign related or stuff, but they do. So, there's nothing you can do about it. But, so we've got a letter from Chicago, North Aurora, Countryside, McHenry, Petersburg. This one's from Mount Sterling, Chicago. This is after the campaign. Pekin, Naperville again. This one's she sent it empty, but I think it's from Springfield. This guy, a nice fax from Wilmette. And I bring these in because our campaign literally was from everywhere, and it resonated with so many people. And I have a binder after binder after binder of notes that we saved that came in through the mail during our campaign. So people were energized about this. They want to be told the truth about what's going on in Illinois. And so that's what I think is part of my mission, is to give them the real facts they want to know. And I like doing that. I like informing people.
Well, you're no longer a candidate, but...
No, I'm not. That's kind of freeing, actually.
I was going to say, so what you say now has nothing to do with getting votes. I look at the depth of the problems facing Illinois, and I don't know what the solution is.
Oh, it's bankruptcy. Bankruptcy's in our future. Bankruptcy.
As a state?
I thought it was interesting because today, as a matter of fact, and we don't like to date this necessarily, but last year the courts came in and told the city of Harvey that they must raise their property taxes to pay for fire pensions because they had not been paying in enough. And today what was reported is that the city of Harvey laid off half of its firefighters.
Today?
Yes, because they can't afford them, because the comptroller intercepted or is holding back $1 million of funds that is due to go to that city, but because they haven't paid what they should into the pensions, she has intercepted that to give it to the pension system directly. It's a brand new bill that came up, I think, last year or a year before, saying that they can intercept funds if cities aren't complying with the pension obligation. And so that's kind of scary, but that is in the future of the state of Illinois. Increasing property taxes to pay somebody else's pension. That's what's going on. And it's alarming. Cities like that are headed to bankruptcy. East St. Louis should be considered bankrupt. City of Chicago, bankrupt. They owe 7 times more than they take in revenue. So we've got serious financial problems in this state.
I presume at some point,
Yeah.
either on the campaign or just as a lawmaker, you've talked to, in fact, we had firefighters as we taped this going through the Capitol today. When you talk to these, either police or firefighters or other public sector workers and warn them,
but their attitude
they
is,
understand it?
no, their attitude is we paid in, we should get what we deserve, and we don't want to hear anything different. Okay, that's great, but 50% of the firefighters in Harvey got laid off, and they don't have a job, and they're not going to be accumulating more pension benefits, and that's the reality. That's what happens. When the downturn hit Wheaton in 2008, the city laid off employees. That's what they do when they can't afford it. So that reality is going to hit more and more cities as it goes on.
Now that we have Governor Rauner running as the Republican nominee against Mr. Pritzker, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. Now, you said you would vote for the governor. Mm-hmm. Is that where it ends? Are you going to? What are your feelings, having, as we said, basically been lied? Not basically, you've been lied about in his campaign material. How much do you let, as a candidate, stuff roll off, and what's kosher, and what do you think is not fair play in a campaign, to where you say, I'm not going to go to bat for you after you came out and just lied about who I was? Is that kind
Listen,
of?
I will vote for our Republican nominee. I'm a Republican, and while I respect the process, I don't respect the campaign that he ran. But I will vote for him, and he's got a lot of work to do to win back the majority of Republican voters. But good luck to the governor in November.
Have you had any conversation at all?
I have not. No, I've not spoken with him.
Mr. Pritzker wants to have a progressive income tax, as we have at the federal level.
I think it's just talk. I think that's just talk. I think that's campaign talk, because I think, Mike Madigan, who obviously will control Mr. Pritzker, he knows better. He knows his members can't vote for a progressive income tax. He knows the state, politically they can't. I think he knows financially that another tax increase just increases out-migration, which decimates the tax base even more in the state of Illinois. I think the speaker's got his limits in terms of that. So I would not look that I think that's more campaign rhetoric than actual policy that would happen under a Pritzker administration. As
you are looking now toward the last, 7 months or so of your tenure in state government, and you've been in office for 6 years?
I'm in my sixth year, so just over 5.
What's the experience been of serving for 6 years in the Illinois House of Representatives at this point in time?
Pure frustration. Yeah. And including what I went through in committee yesterday and then this morning. Because Democrats, and actually Republicans too, truly believe that they know people's business better than they know their business. That's what they believe. Your politicians here think they can tell you how to run your business, and that they're more knowledgeable about what your business does than you do, who have been running it for 20, 30, 50 years and have built multiple businesses and employ many, many people. That is the attitude in Springfield. The other attitude is that there's nothing that you do in your business that's beyond our realm to regulate as politicians, and we're going to do it. And that attitude I find abhorrent and arrogant and disrespectful. And that's my frustration. They think they are all powerful, all knowing here, and you've got hardworking folks running businesses, large, small, everything in between, not-for-profits running their not-for-profit. And And they just think that they can come in and tell you exactly what to do. And even, quite frankly, public institutions. They think they know how to run them better. And that's our problem. You have politicians that are full of themselves.
So knowing what you know from having been in the legislature, having gone around the state and heard from the people, knowing the problems that the state is facing, and now who we have as our gubernatorial candidates, what's your crystal ball for the future of Illinois?
I predict that Pritzker wins in November, that we continue to have 1/2 or less the economic growth that you see in the rest of the United States, because that's what's been happening. I predict an increasing amount of out-migration as property taxes escalate and people can no longer afford to stay in their homes. And even as the progressive income tax probably doesn't happen, you'll continue to see fee increases at the local level, tax increases at the local level, and this is just going to continue to slowly boil the frog until it's boiled to death, which is the Illinois taxpayers, the frog in this case. And I think that's going to be the prediction until you have the first pension fund go insolvent, or you have the first city throw up their hands and say, we're bankrupt. We cannot take these mandates anymore. We need complete freedom to restructure our debt and restructure how we operate. And until that happens, you're going to continue the slow growth process, because I know the politicians who sit in those seats, and they are clueless about really putting in the reform that must happen in this state. So I'm here to stoke that revolt. I'm here to stoke the revolt among the people around the state, to put these pieces of the puzzle together for them and give them the courage to also speak up for themselves, because they know it too.
If people want to get a hold of you, is there a Jeanne Ives website, or how would they connect?
I'm on Facebook. I have a personal Facebook. My Ives for Illinois Governor Facebook is still operating, but we don't check it as much now. You can. We'll set that all up. I don't have a new website yet. We do have our old website. We're archiving all our information and our data. But I'm in the middle of figuring out how I'm going to move into that next phase and what that's going to look like. So that'll be forthcoming, how to contact me.
And you don't know, well, having run not only as state rep but now for governor, is there a possibility that you would run again at some point in the future, or are you done with politics?
I don't know. I have no idea what I'm going to do. We'll see what the future brings.
All right. Jeanne Ives, thank you again.
Thank you. Yeah.